Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There it is, so you don't miss any of our football content this season. It has been, if I might say, fantastic. Listen, there's no question that certain markets are loud. I remember when I worked in Tampa. Tampa is like the 14th biggest city in the country. It plays like it's 80th. It's just quiet. Like the media is like your friend. Nobody's really, there's nobody with real teeth. In Philadelphia, everybody's got teeth. In New York, you've got still 4 active newspapers. Newspapers are dying. New York, they're still around the batting cage at Yankee Stadium. They're at practice. The stronger opinion wins. So I just think the Jets is a hard gig. It doesn't have great ownership. All right, let's go to Kansas City 17, Chargers 10. I was thinking about this, because when the game was starting, Jim Nantz and Romo were talking about the injuries and, Derwin James, Slater, Bosa, and they were talking about some of the injuries. It's a lot of guys that get hurt all the time. And they got up to a 7-0 lead. Herbert to that Lloyd.
McConkey.
What's the kid? Oh, God, that back of the end zone touchdown throw is just that illustrates how hard it is to be a successful quarterback. Chargers had 3 sacks early. They'd lead 7-0. You felt like Herbert was limping, but it was working. And you're like, oh, Chargers are in a little bit of a hole. But watching, my 2 thoughts were the same Charger players, and a couple of them are already expensive. The same guys are getting hurt all the time. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Harbaugh got rid of them. They just weren't healthy. I kind of think they're going to move off Bosa eventually.
He won't be back.
And Derwin James, they're just hurt all the time.
Khalil Mack's been really good for them. I mean, he looks fantastic, doesn't he?
Yep. Yep. And they've got a couple of pass rushers out there that they've drafted well. They've got some players. But when your same guys are getting hurt, even if they're high profile, I think year 2 for Harbaugh, maybe at the trade deadline, he may move off some more guys. He wants dependability. But as I watch Kansas City, and again, Herbert's running for his life because they have backups starting on all over the offensive line. I feel like every Kansas City game now looks the same. Every one is that, they'll fall in a hole, or you watch them early and you're thinking, this isn't the Sunday. They're just not. And then Rashee Rice gets hurt very early. And I'm like, they're on the road. They're out of sync. Chargers had multiple sacks. And then they just and I think so much of this is Andy Reid and Spags. They just slow the game down. They're really good at killing momentum. Mahomes had a couple of big runs. He had a couple of beautiful passes. Kelce was more visible today and available. Obviously, with Rashee Rice out, Travis Kelce becomes more available. But there is something about Kansas City is that we tend to love flash, like Darnold's numbers. And I like Kansas City, but I ask you, if they played Minnesota tomorrow, I would take Kansas City. What are we supposed to make of this team that isn't pretty? Every single game is close. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. They don't start necessarily well. They always end great. Do you worry at all that Kansas City's sort of following in this? It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're just winning the same way, and they're not playing particularly well for long periods of time.
I feel like Spags and Andy are just like, you fill up the refrigerator and they're making meal after meal, and every time they're using different ingredients. You're like, how are you doing this? Eventually, if you don't go to the store, you're going to run out of stuff to make food with.
Right.
And today, after Mahomes, he threw a pretty bad pick early in the game, airmailed Kelce.
Yes, a terrible one.
And then he hit. He didn't mean to, but Rashee Rice is their best receiver. And he kind of ended up hitting him like he's John Lynch because he was trying to make a tackle, might have blown out his knee. Like let's just hypothetically say he's gone for a long period of time or the season. That's pretty devastating. They were playing with Kareem Hunt. This is not 2018. He's back on the team because their starting running back just broke his leg. And the other kid from Missouri, his own family threw a wedding last Sunday because they didn't even think the guy was going to be an NFL player. So I don't know. Like, it's remarkable what they're doing. And they've been playing like this basically for 2.5 years now. It does feel eventually like I love these guys. And it's truly one of the great runs of my lifetime, any sport, what they're rattling off now over this 5 years, but specifically these 2 years. I don't know how you can maintain this. Eventually, obviously they're gonna lose some games this year, but like their margin for error in a playoff game, it's just very, very difficult for them to score. And Mahomes cannot. And you saw Andy get kind of mad early. You cannot turn the ball over. And I think Andy felt right away like this Charger team came to play. This Jim Harbaugh, they're ready. Like this could be 15-13 final score, and he airmails it and Steele fumbles, and it's like you could tell Andy was pissed because this has to be a flawless. We hold on to the ball even if we're going to score 14 points total. Okay, we'll win it 14-10. We can't hand them the ball at their own 30-yard line, and I think if the two tackles are there, Chiefs easily could have lost today. I mean, they are holding on. It's competitive character, the toughness. It's what you get out of like some of those late 90s Bulls teams, some of those Curry, Clay, Draymond teams. Like they're the only team in the league that has this in the bag to keep doing this. Like eventually you just drop a game, whatever. They refuse to lose. They got nothing. I mean, their best receivers carted off the field 5 minutes into the game. They're riding Kareem Hunt, who I'm pretty sure wasn't even in the league like 3 weeks ago. But they had no choice because their other guy broke his leg.
Yeah, no, I as I watched that game, they got an injury break. The Chargers are missing tackles, Abosa, Derwin James. They were missing their best athletes defensively. And it's the NFL. You have to make up for that. But as I watched them,
it's a tough opponent. It's a tough opponent for that because their defense, Chris Jones and Spags, they just kept on any third and long, they would just put 95 over one of the tackles, even though he's a defensive tackle. So it's like, I just become a defensive. They wouldn't do that with Alt and Slater in the game. So it was total mismatch. You just kind of screwed.
And I think what they do with Chris Jones, there's no rigidity with the Chiefs. Like, the saying I use all the time at the volume to everybody is don't worry about being right, get it right. Don't get stubborn on stuff. It's a fluid business, change. The Chiefs, like you said, they go into the cupboard and whatever's available they use. Like they're not a rigid franchise, which by the way, New England became in their dominance. I mean, Belichick basically took over the drafts. Belichick only wanted to coach players he liked to coach. They got very rigid. They started buying into their own stuff. And by the way, Greg Popovich, I'm not going to deal with Kawhi. Well, you probably should. He's great. The danger, one of the things I always respect about Saban, he just kept hiring great coaches. He went from a defensive culture to a quarterback wide receiver culture. Saban was just like, whatever wins, wins. And I always said that's really different with Saban. He didn't have Belichick's ego. He was willing to just pivot off guys, move into guys. I mean, good God, in the middle of a national championship game, he changed his quarterbacks. Saban was whatever wins works. I feel with Andy Reid, I get that. I don't feel like there's this definitive sort of moral standard, this saying, just do your job. Kansas City doesn't have one of those. They don't have a do your job, right? They don't have one. They just, they do what they have to do in the series to score.
Yeah, I think Andy, what makes him pretty special is every guy knows you got to do your job because he will cut you or trade you, but he doesn't talk like that. I mean, this is a California kid at his core. He wears sandals, right? You see when do you ever see Nick Saban? Most of the time in a suit, but if not in a suit, slacks and a polo.
Yeah.
You see Andy's in rainbow sandals. He vacations,
right.
He's a beach guy, LA. So I think that's kind of his core and his personality, but he has high standards. And I think that's set by their core leaders in Mahomes, Jones, and Kelce now. I do think they benefit. Is the league watered down's the wrong way, but it's definitely not as top heavy because the Bills and Ravens play tonight. Well, Chiefs have been beating them for years, right, in big games. So it's not like Mahomes and Andy would be intimidated in those spots. But who else are they really worried about, right? The Steelers?
TD, Tutty. Taking it to the house, in for 6, whatever you call a touchdown. One thing's for sure, TDs matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, special teams or defense, they don't care how you score them. They want to bet on touchdowns. You want to bet on touchdowns. DraftKings Sportsbook, #1 place to bet on TDs. Ready to place your first NFL bet? Betting something simple, like a player scoring a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app. Make your bet today. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 and get 250 in bonus bets instantly and 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. The code's Colin. Again, the code, new customers bet $5 and get 250 in bonus bets and 1 month of NFL Plus Premium only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
No. You think Justin Fields is beating them? It'd have to be Buffalo. And Lamar in a game to beat the Chiefs would have to be awesome throwing the ball because they are not going to let him run around. They just are not.
Yeah. I think that's why Buffalo this year is interesting because they have a legitimate running game and they're much less Josh Allen reliant. They have 2 excellent tight ends, an excellent running back.
And Houston would be the wild card too, I would say.
I don't trust Houston. I think when Joe Mixon's healthy, they're tough. They're a tough out. I think as good as CJ Stroud is, we saw it with Caleb Williams today. Young quarterbacks need to run game. Just changes everything. I love what Jaden Daniels is doing, but they're running the hell out of the ball at Washington. He's getting, there's a lot of 2nd and 4s, 3rd and 1. It just opens up everything. And so I think Buffalo finally has given Josh. James Cook's a real running back. He's explosive. So I think that's the play. But again, I'll go back to it. When I watch Kansas City, generally with dynasties, we get this. Durant shows up in Golden State for 3 years. They look different. Bama, Saban look different. Georgia for a couple of years look different. Hell, last year, Michigan was so dominant. They didn't throw the ball on the road against rivals and beat Penn State. It looks like a dynasty. If you just saw the Chiefs on a week-to-week basis and had to guess who's the best team in the league, you wouldn't put them in the top 6. Mahomes makes a terrible throw. They got so lucky today he threw a pick, then the guy fumbled down the sideline.
Here's what
it doesn't look like
this year. They're not going to have enough, but over the next couple of years, if you were on the bus with Andy going back, he'd go, that guy Jim Harbaugh is going to have that team looking like ours. And you felt it today, and they just ran out of gas and Herbert limping around. And I was thinking about this watching the Alabama game. 3 of the last 4 games, Kalen DeBoer has worked Kirby Smart, Steve Sarkisian, and Dan Lanning. The one guy who kicked his ass. Now, granted, Michigan was a lot better than Washington. Was Harbaugh. So DeBoer's destroying these other guys. They're all making 10 to 12 million and running college football. And Jim Harbaugh has proven. You see that stat? It's the first time ever a reigning national champion had played the reigning Super Bowl champion. I think there's a 50-50 chance Jim Harbaugh wins a Super Bowl. He's that level of a guy. It was awesome to watch his team today just come out like they were there to brawl, and they were not. And how much money did they have sitting in the suite? $300 million, right? So it's just wait till they over the next couple of years are able to build it up. Andy's been in Kansas City how long now? 11 years. It's going to take him a couple years, but if they can keep Herbert healthy, that thing's going to be real because that style, exactly what the Chiefs are doing, always translates. Tackle everybody, rush the passer, run the ball, and have a good quarterback who it's weird. He wants a game manager with that type of skill set. Because I watched Herbert today and I don't know what his box score was, and I bet half the people talking about it will be like he's overrated. I don't know what you're talking about. I'd take that guy on my team any day of the week and twice on Sundays.
Yep.